Hey everybody, I just wanted to show you where my stocking is at. On the last video I didn't have much progress underway. It's been a couple of years and I've worked on this very aggressively when I was first starting the stocking, when you saw the first video, and I made it all the way down to where the foot of the stocking is. Sorry, we had to turn off the heater. Anyways, I just thought I'd point out a few things that I've learned from this stocking. The first thing that I thought I would tell you is where I got the pattern from. In case you like the design, it came from Interweave Knits Holiday Gifts, the 2006 edition, and because the charts are really small in the magazine, I blew them up, so it's a lot easier on the eyes to read, especially if your chart's at a distance. And this was a really simple charted pattern to follow. You can see the repeat isn't very long. And one problem I found with the design, I redid it like 3 times when I first started the top area. This was a one color area all in here, and it was getting really wonky because the float was extremely long. So I added a little piri here, and then this is the rest of it over here, so it looks like a little cross, and that got rid of the wonkiness on that section of the stocking. So in terms of seeing where that's at in the stocking, it's right here. So I added these piris because you could see that would be a big section of one color knitting, and the gauge would be different than the 2 color areas, and so that was my fix, is just add a little piri pattern in between these sections here. The other thing I wanted to tell you is that the author used Jamieson's Shetland Spindrift, and there's 2 Shetland wools that you can choose from, either this one or the other brand, which is called Jamieson and Smith. And it's very, very important to order a shade card if you don't order this from a store where you actually get to see the colors, because they change over time. And so if a pattern calls for a certain color number and you like it, and then you order it a couple years later, the color could be completely different. So I found that out the hard way when I ordered a bunch of yarn for a project that was from an Alice Darmore pattern, and it was about 20 years old and the colors were completely different. And I know Jamieson and Smith has been discontinuing a lot of colors. I don't know about Jamieson's, but overall I'm really, really happy with this yarn, except for I've had one particular problem with it. And I've talked to people on Yahoo groups and asked them if they've had the same problems. With the red color, it goes, I don't know if you can see this or not, but it'll go from very thin, very thin, fine strand, and then it'll get thicker. And as I was working on this stocking, I would come into sections where there was a very long section of yarn that was this thin, and then a very long section of fat, and then this section here, there's a short section of thin and then a longer section of not fat, but more like what the gauge or the thickness should be. So at the time I made the stocking, I did not know that, and so I didn't know the fix for that. And I was becoming concerned, but I went for it anyway, and you can see the result. The gold yarn was a different thickness here compared to the red yarn, which was a much thinner thickness in this section, and it's a bit wonky. You can see the fabric isn't lying flat. But I've been told that once you wash it and block it, let's say we just blocked it, then it should lie more flat. And I've also been told that it will bloom in the wash, and somehow all the fibers will just magically fit together and lay flat. Like you can see here, it's lying flat, and it's just really nice and flat. And but everybody tells me not to worry. You know, this will bloom in the wash and it will be blocked, and all the wonkiness will come out of that section. So you can see here the red was much more texturally consistent, so I didn't get any wonkiness here. And so the fabric is relatively flat even without blocking and washing. So I was really happy with that section, and really discouraged, and I wanted to give up, but I just kept going. So since then I've realized there's 2 fixes to that problem. One, if you get a skein here or there, and you notice that it's got some problems with going from thick and thin, just cut out the thin areas. And it seems so intuitive now, but I didn't think of it at the time. If you have enough yarn, just cut out the thin areas. The other thing you can do is double up the thin areas, so it becomes the same thickness as the rest of the yarn, and you can correct for it that way. So if you really love the quality of the Shetland wool, where it has this nice tweed effect, and you have problems with the yarn going from thick to thin, those are the fixes. And so not to worry, there's a workaround. So another thing I wanted to point out with this stocking is I've left it in a cotton tote bag with a lavender sachet, which I was told the odor would keep moths away. But lo and behold, when I brought it out today to pick up and try to finish, I noticed that I had a little friend that ate a little hole in my stocking. So I think what I'm going to do is rip it out back down to here, and then re-knit it from this point forward. It looks like the breaking of the yarn ends about right there. So fortunately the hole isn't in, I guess the good side is the hole is in an area where it can be fixed as opposed to somewhere up here. So I don't like the smell of mothballs. I thought the lavender might work, but just sort of a cautionary tale for working with wool. I live in a hot, warm weather climate, so it's too hot for me to make sweaters to wear things out of this yarn, but so I don't have a lot of experience with protecting wool like that, so I have to maybe suck it up and get some mothballs. Unless anybody has a solution that you could recommend that would work better than that, without the odor, or work as well but without the odor. Cool thing about this stocking is there's a picot edge. So this will be hemmed under, and it'll sort of have this picot trimming around the top. And it's nice and big, so you can fit a lot of things in there. And there was no mistakes in the pattern whatsoever. I didn't see any errors at all. And if you've never knitted a sock where you've had to turn the heel, I highly recommend working on a Christmas stocking first, because it's nice and big, and it was very easy to get a nice, neat area here. But even with this bigger size stocking, you can see I didn't do the best job in the world. I have a boo-boo there, and on the other side I have a boo-boo here. So this was really my first foray into sock knitting. But I figured what I would do is probably go in there and seam it up a bit with some gold yarn so that I can get rid of the gap. And then perhaps the fix for this side would be to tighten up that white stitch from the inside and hopefully tighten it up. The other thing that's sort of driving me crazy about this project, which is why I've delayed for so long in finishing it, is the pattern calls for a size 0 needle for this section, and it takes a long time to make progress. So I don't know if you can tell, but I used a size 0 to about here, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I said, okay, I'm going to do a 1. I want to get this done faster. And so it does knit faster, but now my gauge is bigger, and so the stocking is getting bigger. But I'm just going to keep going with the 1, because this will never get done if I stay on the 0 needles. And this is just a stocking, so it's not like it has to fit anybody. And so basically that's it. And so I hope you enjoyed my... Oh, here's another flaw for beginners in case you want to learn from some of the mistakes I've made. I don't know if you can see this very well, but here's a split stitch. So this yarn, I don't know how many plies it is. There's, I think, a 2-ply yarn. So one of the plies was on the needle and the other ply got left off. And so I've got a little hole here, and here's the 1 ply that didn't make it in, and I didn't catch it in time to fix it. So I'm sure there's a fix for that, and I'm probably going to consult with the teacher and figure out how to deal with that. I might just take some monofilament thread that I use for quilting, which is basically a clear see-through thread, and take a needle and just thread that, use a needle and thread, and then just sew this down to hopefully make it lay flat so nobody will ever know that it's there, and then it won't be in harm's way of being snagged and so on. So hopefully you guys will learn from my mistakes if you're new at this, and think about this as you're working on your own projects. And again, I'll just mention one more time, I want to give credit to the author. She's an amazing gal. Let's see, if you want to zoom in there, here's her gorgeous samples in the book. And I hope, if you like this, that they have back issues, because I have searched high and low for a Farrell stocking, and this is the only one I've ever found. So again, Interweave Knits Holiday Gifts 2006 edition, and it starts on page 31. Well, the photos, but the actual project, sorry I didn't have this more prepared. It starts on page 35, and the author, or the artist, is Donna Kay. And she just does a fabulous job. And here you can see the charted, the difference between the size of the charted patterns in the magazine and then blowing them up to make them easier to read, so there's less eye strain. And here's some close-up shots of what hers look like. And I wasn't super happy with the gold and red on this stocking. That's another thing I wasn't really happy about. But she was saying use traditional Christmas colors of red, green, and gold. And somehow I thought my red and gold would sort of look like hers a bit, and I didn't want to go that orange. But in hindsight, I thought maybe I should have done some swatching, and this might have turned out better if the red was the foreground color and the gold was the background color. But overall, I think if I could have done this again, I would have made the pattern in white consistent with the rest of the stocking. But maybe it would have been just too much white on top of color throughout. So it does mix it up a bit. It gives it maybe a little more visual interest, because you're kind of breaking up the sections by changing it out a bit, and gives the place an eye to rest before you jump down to here where it's brighter and it pops more. So anyways, that's it. And as soon as I finish this, I want to wash it, block it, and I'm going to take a before and after photo so you can see whether the wonkiness problem went away or not, and the difference between what it looks like when it's just knit versus after you washed and blocked it. So I don't know when I'm going to get that video out, but I'll try my best to finish this during what I call knitting season where I live. The coldest it ever gets here in the winter is maybe 60 degrees, so it's just way too hot to knit with this kind of stuff when it's not the winter. So this is the peak time for me to be knitting, and hopefully this year I'll finally finish this stocking. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helps. Happy knitting. So that's basically it.